These days, everyone wants to be a digital nomad. And having been one myself for the last few years, traveling around the world, working just a few hours a day from my laptop, I have lived the dream. Exploring cultures, meeting new people, expanding my business network, and living the life that so many people strive for. But being a digital nomad isn't always everything that it's cracked up to be. Of course, on the whole, the positives do outweigh the negatives, but in this Instagram-obsessed world, I see the portrayal of being a digital nomad as being this utopian life where absolutely everything is perfect. But just like anything in life, that's simply not the case. So, over the next few minutes, I'm going to give you my honest thoughts on this lifestyle and share the most important lessons that I've learned over the last few years to hopefully help you decide if this is the kind of life that you want. So, for those of you that don't know, I've been a digital nomad since early 2022 with my Amazon KDP business, which I run entirely online. And since doing that, there have definitely been positives and negatives that I want to talk about to make you fully aware of what you can expect from this lifestyle. So let's dive straight in and start with some of the positives. So on the topic of the positives, let's start with the really obvious one, and that is freedom. Being a digital nomad and working online, you literally have the ability to work anywhere in the world. You can spend time exploring new cultures, seeing new sites, and if you don't like a place, you can simply just go and pack up and move anywhere else that you want to. Now, having grown up in the UK, if I've been abroad at any point, it's usually been to Europe, so I decided to take this opportunity and move to Southeast Asia, where it's a completely different culture, completely new people, and to be honest, completely out of my comfort zone. I literally went into it with the mindset of, if I don't like it here, I can move home at any point in time and just be back exactly where I was when I started. So a lot of people have this kind of fear. Honestly, there's no point having this fear because you can literally just go back to exactly where you are at any given point. So aside from freedom, another massive benefit of being a digital nomad is purchasing power. So many people who have an online business often get paid rates that kind of match the standard of living in the Western world, which is generally a lot more expensive than somewhere like Southeast Asia. So for example, £2,000 that you make will go so much further in somewhere like Bali than it will do in the UK. And another reason why this is such a big benefit for digital nomads is people who are especially just starting out with their business probably don't have a huge amount of money that they can spend. But if you're in somewhere where your money just goes so much further, it's much easier and more sustainable to grow your online business there. This means because your living costs are so much lower, you can reinvest so much more money back into your business early on and just grow your business a lot quicker. Now, positive number 3, and this is a massive one that I underestimated before I became a digital nomad, and that is meeting like-minded people. You see, digital nomad hotspots all attract very like-minded people, and I know there's a lot of people who are still living where they grew up. They're not really into the same things as their friends that they've had for years are, and they just feel a bit left out. Honestly, moving away to digital nomad hotspots like this is the easiest way to find people exactly like you if you're in this position feeling a little bit lost. Yes, it's scary to make that leap because you are technically going to the other side of the world, but trust me, it is so much easier to meet like-minded people, and these people can massively benefit you in every single area of your life. And not only does this mean that you're around much more like-minded people, but it's also great for your business network, and it can also speed up the rate in which you successfully build your business because there's so many people around you that have been there and done what you're doing, and they're more than happy to help give advice on how you can help grow your business. So honestly, the people that you meet becoming a digital nomad is one of the biggest benefits. Now, the final big benefit to being a digital nomad is a little bit of a cliche one, but it's cliche for a reason, and that is your personal development. When I first became a digital nomad, I absolutely threw myself in the deep end. I traveled to the other side of the world. I knew absolutely nobody here and just had to find my own way of life out here. And it can often seem quite overwhelming at the start, but trust me, throwing yourself in the deep end is the fastest way to grow as a person. And again, I know this sounds so cliche, but honestly, it's just so true. So for me, those are the main benefits of being a digital nomad that I've learned over the last few years of being one myself. Now, I'm sure they're quite similar to the ones that you've seen all over social media, but I also think it's important for me to talk about the negatives of this lifestyle to give you a true reflection before you make this leap, rather than just giving you this distorted, idealistic view that you often see all the time on social media. As I say, don't get me wrong, the positives massively outweigh the negatives, but here are some things I think you need to be aware of before you take this leap. Now, the first negative I'm going to mention is the social merry-go-round. So a lot of these hotspots where you find lots of digital nomads, they're very temporary places. Some people are usually visiting for a month, 2 months, or maybe a couple of weeks, and then they're gone again. So it's very difficult to form long-term relationships with people because they're just there for a few weeks and then they're gone somewhere else. Now, at the very start of my journey, I didn't really understand this, and there's countless times I got really close to some really good friends, and before I knew it, they were gone and I was never gonna see them again. You see, stability isn't something that comes naturally when you're living a life as a digital nomad. So if that's something that's really important to you, then perhaps this lifestyle isn't exactly what you need. For me, this took me a little bit of time to work out, but it got to the point where I realized that actually if someone is not gonna be staying in an area that I'm staying in for a long time, there's probably not that much point in putting that much effort into the relationship with them. It might seem quite drastic and a little bit brutal, but it is just so true. So don't be afraid to do that if you are looking to live this lifestyle and you want some kind of long-term friendships. Now, personally, this idea of the social merry-go-round, I'm absolutely okay with it, but if you're someone that's quite dependent on other people, this might be a big factor for you. The second negative, quite an obvious one, missing your home comforts. Now, this depends, of course, entirely on where you come from originally. Healthcare is a big one, especially if you're from the UK. Because I've grown up in the UK, I've been used to a really good healthcare system where everything is free, and it's just generally a really easy experience. However, as a digital nomad in other countries, you often have to rely on your travel insurance if you're going to the doctors or even to hospital, and these things can be a little bit expensive, so you just have to be very careful with this kind of thing. And make sure you do your checks before you go traveling to another country. And another home comfort that is more specific to business is the time zone synchronization. So if you're in somewhere like Southeast Asia like I am, you're really far ahead of the Western time zones, and you can really take for granted being in the UK or Europe and generally being in sync with most areas of the world. However, if you're on the other side of the world, sometimes business meetings and things are just a little bit more difficult. You have to stay up pretty late, especially if you're with someone in America. And again, not a huge thing, but just something that is worth bearing in mind, especially if you're having an online business. And the final kind of home comfort that I think you miss out on is just a completely different routine. Now, I'm someone that's a massive routine person, so I will have to stay in somewhere for at least 2 months, because for me, I can't really focus on my health, my diet, my business, all these kind of things that are really important to me if I'm constantly jumping around the place. I have to be somewhere for a decent amount of time. So if you're someone like this, then I massively recommend not hopping around loads of places and just staying in one place. On top of that, going back to earlier points, it also means you can form slightly longer term relationships with people, and generally is what I would recommend, but of course, everyone is different. Now, the next negative I'm gonna call self-sabotage. Now, I mentioned earlier about self-development being a massive perk, but there is such a fine line between self-development and self-sabotage, especially when you're a digital nomad. While you're a digital nomad, you generally meet so many other successful people who are doing really well with their online business, and because you've increased the value of people around you, it can be a little bit overwhelming at times. There's always someone that's making more money than you, in better shape than you, doing things better than you. So it's very important you don't slip into this mindset of self-sabotage and saying, I'm not as good as them, I'm failing. Now, this might not seem like it's actually going to happen to you, but I've spoken to so many people who have experienced this, and I've also experienced it myself. And in these hotspots, you do also get massive wafflers who talk a really good game about how much money they're making, how successful they are, how on point they are with everything in their lives. You can generally spot them quite easily, but there are so many of them, and if you're not careful, it can really make yourself feel bad about the things that you're doing, even though you're really on track with what you want to be achieving. So yeah, find that fine line between being inspired by people around you, but not drawing comparisons and setting unrealistic expectations just because somebody else has achieved something that you want to do. And the final negative is getting itchy feet. Now, this is not a pity party for people like me, but there is such thing as having too much freedom. And I know you're watching this thinking, Sam, cry me a river, but it is actually really important for some people. The world is absolutely huge. There's so much to see. There's so many people to meet, and having the flexibility and freedom to literally go wherever you want to, whenever you want to, can be a blessing, but for some people, it can also be a curse. No matter how happy you are, there will always be that voice in your head that thinks you might be happier elsewhere. And because you have the freedom to potentially go there, it's often easy to feel unsatisfied with where you currently are. You can very easily lose this sense of gratitude that you have and become ungrateful for a life that so many people are absolutely desperate for. And let's be honest, a life that you were once desperate for. So my advice to you would be aware of these thoughts because they will creep in at some point, but just remind yourself how lucky you are to be in the position that you're in and how many people are desperate to live the life that you want, because there is always more money to make. There is always more beautiful places to see. You have to acknowledge this voice in your head, but never lose sight of just how lucky you are to have what you have. So with all that said, is it worth becoming a digital nomad? For me, absolutely, but it is a personal choice and it depends entirely on where you are in your life and what you want from it. If you're someone that craves stability and fears the idea of the unknown, then I would be very wary of this path. Now, that's not me saying don't go for it, but just be very careful when weighing up the pros and cons of a lifestyle like this. Personally, I think it's a lifestyle that everyone should aim for at some point in their lives because there is just so much to learn about different cultures and crucially to learn about yourself. So I hope you found this video useful, and if you do have any questions about my story or any questions you have about being a digital nomad in general, then please do let me know down below in the comment section below this video. And I'd also love to hear from other digital nomads if there are points that I haven't mentioned in this video that they have experienced themselves. So I look forward to seeing those. Thanks very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.